The knife glimmered in the candlelight as I sliced into our anniversary cake. 15 years of marriage, 15 years of what I believed was love. The restaurant buzzed with energy, couples laughing, glasses clinking, lives unfolding in happiness. Paul, my husband, reached across the table, his fingers brushing against mine. I smiled the way I always had. His phone buzzed again the 5th time that evening. Go ahead, I said. It might be important, but I already knew who it was. I'd known for months. Boff Call gave an apologetic smile and checked his phone. The same glow lit up his face, the one I'd seen in the dark of our bedroom when he thought I was asleep, the same one when he claimed to be working late. That glow had been dimming something inside me for a long time. Rebecca, he said, suddenly, setting his phone down. I need to tell you something. Just then, the waiter appeared with 2 glasses of champagne. Your anniversary special. Compliments of the house. We thanked him, but to me, the bubbles only mocked what this day had become. 15 years, 3,652 days of building a life, and I already knew what was coming next. I'm leaving you, Paul said. His tone was steady, too steady, rehearsed. I've fallen in love with someone else. I nodded slowly and took a small sip of champagne. Who is she? His eyes shifted, then met mine again. It's Lisa, your sister. The room seemed to tilt, though I'd barely touched my drink. It wasn't the confession that shocked me. I had pieced together the affair weeks earlier. It was the cruelty. Our anniversary dinner, a public place where I couldn't yell, couldn't break down. She's pregnant, he added, as though pulling off a bandage. I placed my glass back carefully, making sure it didn't make a sound against the white tablecloth. I had spent 15 years perfecting the art of concealing my emotions. Tonight would be my greatest test. I see, I said quietly. And when were you planning to leave? Tomorrow. We found a place. I'm sorry it had to be like this, but you're not sorry it happened. I finished for him. He looked down at his plate. No, I'm not. What Paul didn't realize was that I had been preparing for this moment far longer than he imagined. He had no clue what was coming next. None at all. I raised my glass. 2 new beginnings. Then, confused by my calm, he hesitated before clinking his glass against mine. As I sipped the champagne, I allowed myself a small secret smile. Paul and Lisa thought they had won. They had no idea they'd just stepped into a game I'd been preparing to play for months, and I never lost. 6 months earlier, I had first noticed the change in Paul. Subtle things, the way he suddenly cared about his appearance after years of neglect, the new cologne, the gym membership he actually used, the business trips that never used to require overnight stays. I wasn't naive. As a corporate lawyer, I had spent 15 years spotting lies in depositions. Still, I wanted to be wrong about my husband. Then came the night he kissed me on the cheek instead of the lips. A small detail, but after 15 years, it was a break in routine. Something wrong? I asked. Just tired, he said, avoiding my eyes. That night, I lay awake beside him, studying the face I had woken up to for a decade and a half. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, one text, then another. He had never changed his password. It was my birthday. The irony wasn't lost on me. The texts were from Lisa, my sister, the same sister who had been visiting more often, hugging Paul a little too long, asking strangely specific questions about our marriage. Miss you already. Can't wait until we can stop hiding. I placed the phone back exactly where I found it. I didn't cry. I didn't wake him up. Instead, I went to the guest bathroom, turned on the shower, and sat on the floor as the water ran. I needed space to think. Lisa had always wanted what I had, my toys as a child, my closest friends as a teen, even my first boyfriend in high school. And now, my husband. By morning, I had the beginnings of a plan. You look tired, said May, my assistant, as I walked into the office the next day. Rough night, I replied, setting down my bag. Is Jack in today? Jack Harmon, our firm's private investigator, was a former cop with questionable ethics but unmatched skill. We usually kept him on retainer for corporate espionage, but I had something far more personal in mind. Morning, Rebecca, Jack said as I stepped into his cluttered office an hour later. What brings you to my corner of the world? I closed the door behind me. I need surveillance. Personal matter. Jack raised an eyebrow but didn't press. That was why I trusted him. My husband. And my sister. I need confirmation. Times, places, everything. He nodded slowly. You really want to know? I already do. But I need proof. This isn't for a divorce case. I shook my head. No, this is personal. Doc studied me carefully. So this is completely off the record. Yes, I'll pay you directly. He nodded. I'll start today. As I turned to leave, Jack called after me. Rebecca, I'm sorry. I didn't answer. I had no room for sympathy. Back in my office, I opened my computer and began digging. Not into divorce lawyers. I already had plenty of those in my contacts. Instead, I focused on financial structures, hidden accounts, and the vulnerabilities in Paul's real estate company. The one he had built from scratch using my family's money as seed capital. My phone buzzed. Lisa was calling. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Hey sis, I said, forcing warmth into my voice. What's up? Just checking in, she replied. Thought we could grab lunch this week? The nerve of her was almost impressive. Almost. That would be great, I lied. I've missed you. We set plans for Thursday. I needed to see her in person, to look into the eyes of the sister who was sleeping with my husband, and figure out what I had overlooked for years. After hanging up, I pulled out a small notebook, nothing digital that could be traced, and started making lists. People who knew both Paul and me, allies and rivals, friends and family. Each one was a potential piece in a game that was quickly becoming more complex. My office door opened. May peeked in. Your 10 o'clock is here. I closed the notebook. Send them in. No one looking at me that day would have guessed that something inside had shifted. The Rebecca who had spent 15 years being trusting and loyal was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone with nothing left to lose. Lisa arrived 10 minutes late to lunch. As always, she walked into the restaurant, wearing a dress I recognized. I had given it to her for her birthday last year. Sorry I'm late, she said, kissing my cheek. Traffic was awful. I smiled. No problem. I ordered wine. She sat across from me, brushing her hair back in the familiar way we both did. People always said we looked alike, same dark hair, same green eyes. But while I was often described as composed and elegant, Lisa was seen as lively and free-spirited. She had always been the creative younger sister, while I was the responsible firstborn. She lifted her glass. So, how are things with you and Paul? The question lingered in the air. Was she fishing for reassurance that I suspected nothing? Or was she enjoying the cruelty of hearing me talk about a marriage she was secretly destroying? We're good, I said evenly, studying her expression. Busy, but good. Our anniversary is coming up soon. Something flickered across her face, guilt maybe, or calculation. 15 years, I continued. Hard to believe, isn't it? Lisa took a long sip of wine. That's amazing. Any special plans? Paul's planning something. Very secretive about it. I leaned forward. What about you? Anyone special in your life? She blushed, actually blushed. Nothing serious. You seem happier lately. I thought maybe you'd met someone. Lisa fiddled with her napkin. Just enjoying life. We shifted to safer topics after that, her job at the gallery, my recent cases, but throughout lunch, I watched her closely. This was the same sister I had supported through college, the sister I had welcomed into my home when she was broke, and now, the sister who kept glancing at her phone, probably waiting for a message from my husband. When the check came, I insisted on paying. My treat, I said. You don't have to, I want to. I handed my credit card to the server, then added casually, actually, I have a favor. Could you water our plants next month while Paul and I are away in the Hamptons for the weekend? It was a test. No trip was planned. Lisa hesitated. Sure, when exactly? The 12th through the 14th. Paul has that conference, remember? She nodded too quickly. Right. Yes, the conference. Of course, I can help. There was no conference. But now I knew Lisa had learned Paul's schedule well enough to realize there wasn't any real business event that weekend. I kissed her goodbye in the parking lot, promising to call soon. As she drove away, my phone buzzed with a text from Jack. Got something. My office tomorrow. On the drive back to work, my thoughts spiraled. 15 years of marriage, 32 years of sisterhood foundations I had trusted, now crumbling like sand beneath me. That evening, Paul returned home late again. Client dinner, he said, brushing my cheek with a quick kiss. How was it? I asked, glancing up from my book. Productive, or just another dull night? He loosened his tie. Did you eat? I had lunch with Lisa today, I replied casually. We had such a good time. I wasn't very hungry afterward. For the briefest second, Paul hesitated. That's nice. How is she happy? I said, turning a page, very happy these days. Jack's evidence was thorough, as always. Photographs of Paul and Lisa entering a downtown hotel, time-stamped, surveillance footage of them at a coffee shop near her apartment, hands linked across a table, credit card statements showing expensive jewelry pieces I had never received. There's more, Jack said, sliding a folder toward me. Inside were bank records, large transfers from Paul's business account to one I didn't recognize. He opened it 3 months ago, Jack explained. Been moving money into it ever since. I studied the numbers, nearly $2 million, not our entire fortune, but a substantial share of his liquid assets. There's something else, Jack added carefully. Your sister's name is on the account, of course. It was. I closed the folder. Thank you, Jack. What are you planning to do? I stood. That's not your concern. He looked at me earnestly. Rebecca, I'm saying this as a friend, not an employee. Don't do anything you'll regret. I gave him a thin smile. I never do. That night, I created a new email account under an alias and sent 3 messages to Martin Greaves, Paul's biggest rival. I hinted at irregularities in his latest development project, drawing from files I had quietly reviewed in Paul's home office. To Caroline Winters, a journalist known for exposing corporate scandals, I suggested she investigate the funding sources behind the same project, and to Detective James Rivera, an old college friend now working in financial crimes. I wrote a simple note, a coffee meeting, catching up after years. Seeds planted. I turned to Lisa. Unlike Paul, my sister had no corporate shield or wealth to protect, only her reputation. At the gallery where she worked, the gallery specialized in moral art, and was owned by the wife of our county's most conservative judge. I drafted an anonymous letter addressed to myself, designed to appear Inside was a thank you note for a generous donation to a political group with radical positions, views completely at odds with her employers. I made sure Lisa's name appeared as the person who recommended the cause. When the envelope arrived, I would conveniently leave it on my desk during her next visit. Small, deliberate moves, subtle manipulations that could be brushed off as coincidences or innocent mistakes. But first, I had to secure my own footing. The following morning, I met with my firm's senior partner, Eleanor Harding. I may need a leave of absence soon, I told her. Personal reasons. Eleanor frowned. Is this something I should be worried about? My marriage is ending, I said plainly. I'd prefer to keep the details private. Her expression softened. She had endured a difficult divorce herself years earlier. Take as much time as you need. Your clients can be reassigned temporarily. There's one more thing, I added. I may need to transfer some assets, everything above board, but I'd like to avoid any perception of impropriety. Of course, I'll have Gerald in accounting help you handle it quietly. I thanked her and returned to my office, immediately setting up legitimate transfers into accounts solely in my name, a safety net untouchable by Paul, because revenge, I was learning, is rarely a straight path. It felt like a web of connections, every thread leading back to a center that only I could clearly see. The coming weeks demanded the best performance of my life. I became the picture of the trusting wife. I greeted Paul with a smile, asked about his day, and never questioned his late nights or weekend golf outings. I even bought new lingerie and initiated intimacy one evening, noticing how he kept his eyes closed, likely imagining my sister. Meanwhile, my plan moved forward. Martin Greaves started asking questions about Paul's business practices. Caroline Winters requested an interview with his company regarding their funding sources. Detective Rivera agreed to examine some troubling financial patterns I had pointed out. But my real work of art involved Lisa. I'm worried about Paul, I told her one afternoon over coffee. He seems distracted lately. Lisa shifted uneasily. Oh, in what way? Just distant. And then there are these money transfers I can't make sense of. Her eyes widened slightly. Transfers from our joint account, I lied. Large amounts going to some business account. When I asked him, he got defensive. Lisa sipped her latte quickly. I'm sure it's nothing, just work-related. Probably, I agreed. But then there's this woman who keeps calling the house, and she hangs up when I answer. This part wasn't in her expectations. She frowned. A woman? I nodded. At least twice a week. Paul says it's just telemarketers, but I let my voice fade. But what? Lisa pressed, leaning forward. It's silly, but last week I could have sworn she said his name before hanging up. Lisa's expression shifted. confusion, concern, jealousy. She had believed she was Paul's only affair. Now I had planted the thought that she might not be. "Have you asked him about it?" she asked, her voice tight. I shook my head. "I don't want to seem like the suspicious wife. Maybe I'm imagining things, right?" Lisa said, though distracted now. "Probably nothing." That evening Paul came home later than usual, tense and short-tempered. I could only guess at the conversation he'd had with Lisa. "Everything okay?" I asked softly. "Fine," he replied curtly. "Just work stress." I nodded with sympathy. "Anything I can do?" "No," he snapped, then softened. "Sorry. Just tired." "I understand," I said gently, touching his arm. "Why don't you relax? I'll bring you a drink." As I mixed his favorite whiskey sour in the kitchen, I allowed myself a quiet smile. The first cracks were showing. Now, it was time to widen them. The next day, I made sure to accidentally leave my office unlocked during lunch. On my desk was a folder labeled Personal, Confidential. Inside were fabricated text exchanges between Paul and a number I had created on a burner phone. The messages were vague but suggestive, clearly not between him and Lisa. I knew my assistant, May, who always had a soft spot for Lisa, would notice the file and eventually mention it if Lisa called, as she often did. When I returned, the folder was untouched on the outside, but the edges of the papers inside told me someone had peeked. That evening at dinner, Paul's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, frowned, and let it ring out. "Who was that?" I asked casually. "Nobody important," he muttered. Moments later, a text came through. He flipped his phone face down quickly, hoping I wouldn't notice. The game had just entered its next stage. Now Lisa had grown suspicious of Paul, and he found himself trapped between two women, neither fully aware of what the other knew, but I had the complete picture. 3 months after uncovering the affair, I had gathered every piece of evidence. Jack supplied me with detailed proof of both the relationship and Paul's financial misconduct. Meanwhile, Martin Greaves was already exploring the possibility of acquiring parts of Paul's company. Sensing instability, Caroline Winters had published an initial article questioning the funding behind Paul's latest project, while Detective Rivera had quietly opened an inquiry into possible irregularities. Most importantly, I had managed to drive a wedge between Paul and Lisa. The fictitious woman I invented became the spark for arguments between them. Arguments I overheard thanks to the recorder hidden in Paul's car. Lisa demanded explanations Paul couldn't give, because of course, there was no other woman. It was time to move into the next stage. One morning, I brought in a makeup artist to my office. "I have a client meeting," I explained, as she carefully applied faint bruises around my eye and cheek marks that looked several days old, lightly concealed with makeup now fading. When she left, I called Paul's assistant. "Is he free for lunch today? I'd like to surprise him." An hour later, I arrived at his office building, perfectly timed just as the quarterly board meeting ended. The hallway was busy with board members and senior staff. "Rebecca," Paul said, startled to see me. "What are you doing here?" I walked toward him, letting my hair shift slightly to reveal the edge of the fake bruise. His eyes widened. Conversations nearby paused as people noticed my appearance. "Can we talk in private?" I asked softly. Paul quickly led me into his office and closed the door. "What happened to your face?" he demanded. I touched the bruise lightly. "You don't remember." "Remember what? Did you fall?" I stepped back, letting fear show. "Please, Paul, not here." He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Rebecca, I have no idea what you're talking about. I didn't do that to you." "It's okay," I whispered. "I know you didn't mean it. You were angry about the credit card bill." "What? I never." A knock at the door cut him off. His assistant stepped in. "Sorry to interrupt, but your next appointment is here." "Cancel it," Paul snapped. She glanced at my face, then quickly looked away before closing the door. Paul turned back to me. "You need to tell me what's going on right now." Tears filled my eyes. "I forgive you, Paul, but maybe we should talk to someone. Get help. This is insane," he said, his voice rising. "I never touched you." I flinched sharply, making him lower his tone immediately. "Rebecca, please," he said, now pleading. "Whatever's happening, we need to be honest with each other." The irony almost made me laugh, but instead I nodded gently. "You're right, I should go. We'll talk at home." Leaving his office, I walked slowly past as many people as possible. By the next morning, rumors about Paul Marshall and his bruised wife would already be spreading. That evening, Paul stormed into the house. What the hell was that today? I sat calmly on the sofa. What was what? The bruise. The things you implied in front of my colleagues. I tilted my head. I didn't accuse you of anything, Paul. I said I forgave you for something I didn't do. I rose to my feet. Just like I've been forgiving you for what you have been doing. He froze. What does that mean? It means I know about Lisa, I said quietly. The hotel rooms. The hidden account. The transfers. I know everything. His face drained of color. Rebecca, listen, save it. I cut him off. I don't want excuses or apologies. Then what do you want? He asked carefully. I smiled. I want our anniversary dinner at Blue, the place where you proposed. I want one perfect night before we decide what comes next. He stared at me, struggling to process. You want dinner? Yes. Next Friday, our actual anniversary. I stepped closer. 15 years. Paul, doesn't that deserve a proper goodbye? Confusion and relief flickered across his face. He had expected shouting, demands for divorce, maybe even financial threats. Instead, all I asked for was dinner. All right, he said slowly. Dinner at Blue. Thank you, I replied, brushing a kiss against his cheek. I'll make the reservation. As I headed upstairs toward our bedroom, I heard him in the study, on the phone, almost certainly calling Lisa to share this unexpected development. What he didn't know was that I had already spoken to Lisa earlier that afternoon. I think Paul's going to leave me. I had told her, tears convincing enough to sound real. He's been so distant. And I found hotel receipts. Lisa was caught torn between being my sister and Paul's lover. Each week she had quietly suggested, maybe it's better if you're both unhappy. Maybe, I had agreed. But I'm going to give it one last chance. Our anniversary is next week. By telling both of them a carefully crafted half-truth, I knew something was wrong, but wanted to give the marriage one last effort. Ty ensured they would go along with the dinner plan. Paul, to avoid a confrontation, Lisa, because her guilt demanded she give me that small dignity. 1 week, 1 dinner, and then everything would shift. The days leading up to our anniversary were strangely calm. Paul and I moved carefully around each other, like dancers avoiding collision. He came home at decent hours. I cooked meals. We kept our conversations light about the weather, a new restaurant downtown, an upcoming film release. Never the past, never the future. Meanwhile, I completed my arrangements. Caroline Winter's article was set to publish the day after our anniversary dinner, exposing questionable foreign investments in Paul's projects. Detective Rivera had gathered enough evidence of financial misconduct to trigger a formal investigation. Martin Greaves was ready to acquire Paul's company at a fraction of its worth once the scandal unfolded. As for Lisa, I had scheduled an anonymous email to arrive during our anniversary dinner, containing fragments of evidence, just enough to show Paul had been discussing their affair. Everything was aligned. The night before our anniversary, I lay awake beside Paul, listening to his breathing. 15 years in the same bed, the familiar scent of his shampoo, the occasional snore, the warmth of his body just inches away. For a moment, I felt something close to grief. Not regret exactly, more a mourning for what I once believed we had. Are you awake? Paul asked suddenly. I considered pretending to sleep, but decided not to. Yes. Silence stretched for a moment before he spoke. I did love you, Rebecca, for a long time, just not anymore. I finished for him. Another pause. It's complicated. I almost laughed. Complicated, a word people use when they don't want to face the truth. Tomorrow's going to be hard, he said. He had no idea. It'll be what it needs to be, I replied. In the darkness, he turned toward me. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. This time I did laugh, a quiet, bitter sound. No, you're not. You're only sorry you got caught. He didn't argue. Get some sleep, Paul, I said, rolling away from him. Tomorrow's important. On the morning of our anniversary, I spent the day at a spa, indulging in treatments I normally dismissed as unnecessary. A massage, a facial, hair styled flawlessly, nails painted a deep crimson. The stylist admired her work, whistling softly. Hot date tonight. Anniversary, I said with a smile. Congratulations. How many years? 15, she beamed. That's wonderful. He's a lucky man. That he is, I replied, lucky in ways he doesn't even know yet. When I returned home, Paul was gone. A note sat on the counter. Getting my suit cleaned. Meet you at the restaurant. 7 p.m. Perfect. I needed the house to myself from the back of my closet. I pulled out the dress I had chosen just for tonight. Black, elegant, with a subtle neckline deeper than my usual taste. Not my style. But tonight wasn't about being myself. At 6, I called for a car service. No drinking and driving. Blue was as refined as I remembered. Soft lighting, intimate tables. The Mater D led me to our spot, the same table where Paul had proposed 15 years earlier. He was already there, rising as I approached. You look beautiful, he said sincerely. Thank you, I replied, taking my seat. The waiter arrived with champagne. Happy anniversary, he said, explaining it was a gift from the house. We thanked him politely, but as soon as he left, silence settled between us. I ordered your favorite appetizer, Paul eventually said, the scallops. I smiled. Thank you. We spoke cautiously until the food arrived, asking about work, sharing details about recent projects, even mentioning a movie we had both seen separately. The effort to appear normal almost felt rehearsed. Then, as the main course was served, Paul's phone buzzed. He frowned at the screen before putting it away. Everything all right? I asked casually. Fine, he said tightly. Just work. But I knew it wasn't work. Lisa was receiving the anonymous emails, the ones demanding answers. His phone buzzed again and again. Maybe you should answer that, I suggested. It seems urgent. Paul hesitated, then excused himself to the restroom. I knew he was calling Lisa while he was gone. I quietly signaled the waiter for the anniversary cake I had arranged. When Paul returned, his expression was strained. Rebecca, listen, I cut him off as the waiter approached, placing the cake between us. They remembered our anniversary. The small chocolate cake read, Happy 15th Anniversary in elegant script. I picked up the knife, holding it lightly. Remember our wedding cake? You smashed it in my face, I said. Rebecca, Paul repeated urgently. I need to tell you something. I already know, I replied calmly. About Lisa, about the baby, about everything. He froze, stunned. How? I'm a lawyer, Paul. Investigating is what I do. I've known for months. Then why this? He gestured to the table. Because I wanted one last moment of normal before it all unravels. His phone buzzed again, but this time he ignored it, focusing on me. What do you mean, falls apart? He asked. I took a bite of cake. By tomorrow, your company will be investigated for financial fraud. The next day, Martin Greaves will move to buy you out at a fraction of its value. That will be your only way to avoid bankruptcy and criminal charges. Paul's face drained of color. You're bluffing, am I? I smiled. Check your email. He pulled out his phone, scrolling quickly. I knew exactly what he saw. Carolyn Winter's article draft, sent to him for comment before publication. This, you did this. I only revealed the truth, Paul. The fake permits, the shady transfers, the manipulated investments, that was all you. His shock turned to anger. You're trying to destroy me. No, I corrected. I'm making sure you face the consequences. There's a difference. I'll fight it, he snapped. I'll say you framed me because I'm leaving. You could, I admitted. But then I'd have to release the recordings of you discussing those illegal deals, where you admit you knew the money came from questionable sources. His eyes widened. There are no recordings. I raised an eyebrow. Are you certain? His phone buzzed again, more urgently. He glanced at it. It's Lisa. She's panicked, says someone sent her pictures. Evidence I was talking about, us. She thinks I betrayed her. How unfortunate, I said evenly, taking another bite of cake. Affairs depend on such fragile trust, don't they? Realization spread across his face. You orchestrated this. I simply smiled. You planned everything, the dinner, your calm reaction, it was all part of it. Think of it as my anniversary gift to you both, I said. Paul leaned closer, his tone dark. You think you've won? That I'll give up. I'll ruin you, Rebecca. I'll tell everyone what a manipulative woman you really are. You could try, I replied, but I doubt Lisa will stay by your side once she sees the rest of the evidence. What evidence? He demanded. I reached into my purse and slid a folded sheet across the table. Open it. Inside was a printout of a message exchange, one where Paul and another woman spoke of Lisa in crude, dismissive terms. The conversation had been staged, though Lisa couldn't know that. This is fake, Paul whispered sharply. Then prove it, I replied. By the way, Lisa already has a copy. Just then, his phone started ringing. Lisa was calling now. not just sending messages. You should answer, I said evenly. She sounds upset. Paul rose abruptly. This isn't finished. Actually, it is, I answered, calm as ever. One last thing before you leave. I've frozen our joint accounts and moved my inheritance to a private one. At the bottom of that page, you'll find my lawyer's contact details. He'll reach out about the divorce. Paul glared, his expression a mix of anger and reluctant respect. I never thought you could be this cold. You never really knew me at all, I replied. Happy anniversary, Paul. He stormed out of the restaurant, and I motioned for the check. The evening had gone just as I intended almost. There was still one more step. When I returned home, the house was quiet and empty. Paul hadn't come back. Most likely, he had gone straight to Lisa's apartment to handle the mess I had created. In our bedroom, I changed out of my dress, removed my makeup, and sat at my vanity. I picked up my phone and began recording. My name is Rebecca Marshall. I started. If you're watching this, it means my plan worked. By now, my husband Paul's company is under investigation. His affair with my sister Lisa has been revealed, and both of them are facing the consequences of their choices. I explained everything clearly: the affair, the fraud, the careful plan for retribution. My tone remained steady, deliberate, detached. This isn't about anger or jealousy, I continued. This is about justice. Paul not only betrayed our marriage, he defrauded investors, falsified documents, and sought to leave me financially exposed while enriching himself. And Lisa and my sister didn't simply betray me, she partnered with him to take what I had built. I allowed myself a faint smile at the camera, but they underestimated me, as always. I saved the video to a secure cloud, programmed to automatically email to family, close friends, and certain business contacts if I failed to enter a password. Within 24 hours, a safeguard in case Paul chose retaliation. Then I went downstairs, poured a glass of wine, and waited. Just after midnight, the phone rang. It wasn't Paul, but Lisa. What have you done? She sobbed when I picked up double quotes. Hello, sister, I said evenly. Shouldn't you be with your partner right now? Paul's losing his mind, she cried. He says you set him up, that you're trying to ruin his business. He's even turning on me, saying terrible things. Is that so? I asked. Like what? He says I was just convenient, that I meant nothing. Her voice cracked. He showed me fake messages supposedly from me to other women. But they can't be real, can't they? I asked, sipping my wine. How can you be so sure? Her voice faltered. Because he loves me. The way he loved you for 15 years, until someone else came along, I finished softly. She was silent. Then, I never meant to hurt you. And yet you did, I said. Both of you did. What do you want? She asked at last. Money. Paul says you've already taken everything. Not everything, I corrected. Only what belonged to me. And as for you, I want nothing. Nothing at all. I don't ever want to see or hear from you again. Becca, please, she begged, using the name from our childhood. No, I said firmly. We're not sisters anymore. I ended the call, blocked her number, then did the same with Paul's. Tomorrow would bring lawyers, investigations, and more confrontations. But tonight, for the first time in months, I could rest. The fallout came quickly, just as I'd expected. By morning, Caroline Winter's article broke, exposing irregularities in Paul's latest project. By noon, his company's stock had dropped 15%. By market close, it had fallen 30%. My phone didn't stop ringing. Most of Paul's friends, business partners, and even his parents tried to reach me. I ignored most calls, and when I did answer, I kept my response simple. I'm just as shocked as you are. I had no idea. Detective Rivera called to inform me that Paul's formal questioning would begin the next day. Your name may come up, he warned. I thanked him but reminded him I had nothing to hide. That afternoon, I met my divorce attorney, Frederick Monahana, tough lawyer who had managed several high-profile cases. I laid out everything I had uncovered. The affair, financial misconduct, and the evidence supporting it. Impressive, Frederick remarked. Most clients come after the damage is done. You've prepared well. I had time to get ready, I explained. With this evidence, he said, we can secure a highly favorable settlement. Given the circumstances, he may want to avoid further embarrassment. I'm not interested in settling, I told him. I want everything the law allows. No compromises. Frederick gave a cold smile. My kind of client. That evening, there was a knock at my door. The security camera showed Lisa on the porch disheveled and distressed. I didn't answer. She knocked again, then called through the door. Rebecca, please. I know you're in there. We need to talk. I stayed silent, watching through the camera. Paul left me, she said finally, her voice breaking. He blames me for his company's collapse, claims I told you things. I didn't, Rebecca. I swear I didn't betray him. The irony nearly made me laugh. The police came to his office today, she went on. He's facing criminal charges, and he says I was never more than a distraction, that the baby was a mistake. At the mention of the baby, my future niece or nephew, I felt a pang of sorrow, but quickly set it aside. That child wasn't my responsibility. Please, Lisa begged, I have nowhere else to go. Finally, I spoke through the door. Go, to Mom and Dad. She lifted her head, startled at my voice. They'll hate me when they find out. Then, you'll live with that, I replied. The same way I've lived with your betrayal. It wasn't just me, she argued. An affair takes two, and betrayal takes one, I countered. Go home, Lisa, there's nothing for you here. I heard her sob before walking away. The camera showed her getting into her car and driving off. For a moment, I felt empty. This was the outcome I had planned, the revenge I had wanted. So why did it feel so hollow? 3 days after our anniversary dinner, Paul was formally charged with financial fraud, wire fraud, and tax evasion. His company's board voted to remove him as CEO, as expected. Martin Greaves quickly offered to buy the company at a fraction of its value. I watched everything unfold quietly, publicly. I remained the wronged wife, shocked and devastated by her husband's secret life. A week after the charges, Paul asked to meet, against Frederick's advice. I agreed, but only in a public place, a coffee shop downtown. When he arrived, he looked nothing like the Paul I had once known and kept. Unshaven, exhausted. Double quotes, thank you for meeting me, he said, sitting across from me. I only nodded. You've heard about the charges? Yes. They're going to take everything, Rebecca, the company, the house, even my personal assets. I sipped my coffee silently. I've lost Lisa too, he added. Not that it matters anymore. He trailed off. A mistake, I supplied. A convenient distraction. He winced. I deserved that. You deserve worse, I replied. Is that what this is about? He asked. Punishment, revenge, justice, I corrected. You are going to leave me with nothing, Paul. After 15 years after I helped build your company, supported you during every setback, and even invested my family's savings into your dream. I know, he admitted, quietly, and I'm sorry, truly sorry. Too late, I replied. He nodded slowly. I'm looking at jail time. My lawyer says 3 to 5 years. I didn't think it would be that much. I see, I answered. There's another option, he said carefully. A plea deal, but it requires, he hesitated. Requires what? I pressed. Someone else to accept part of the blame, he finished. Someone with access to the company finances, who could plausibly have acted alone. I stared at him in disbelief. You expect me to take the fall? Not all of it, he added quickly. Just enough to reduce my sentence. You have no record. First offense, you'd likely get probation. The arrogance was astounding. Even now, he was trying to use me. Let me be clear, I said slowly. You want me, the wife you cheated on with my sister. The wife you're preparing to leave to commit perjury and accept a criminal record just to save you from the consequences of your own actions. Put like that, even Paul seemed to realize the absurdity of his demand. I'm desperate, Rebecca. Then, suddenly he added, what if I told you Lisa lost the baby? Would that change anything? I froze. The stress, he explained. Fighting after our anniversary dinner. She started bleeding the next day. Miscarried that night. A sharp ache spread through my chest. For all my planning, I had never wanted that. Why tell me this? I asked. Because you should understand what your revenge cost, he said. A trace of the old Paul, calculated and manipulative, showing through an innocent life. I set down my coffee cup carefully, steadying my hand. No, Paul, your selfishness and betrayal cost that life, not me. I stood. Do not contact me again, except through my lawyer. As I walked away, he called after me. You won't feel better. Revenge never heals. I paused, then turned back. This was never about healing. It was about survival. The divorce moved forward, with Paul facing criminal charges and financial collapse. He had no leverage. My attorney secured highly favorable terms. Lisa reached out multiple times, calls, texts, even a letter delivered to my office. I ignored them all. Our parents, confused and hurt by the rift, demanded answers. I gave them part of the truth to explain my distance without exposing the full story. Lisa made choices that hurt me deeply. I told my mother, I need space. But she's your sister. Mom protested. Family forgives. Not this, I said firmly. Not yet, maybe not ever. Life gradually found a new rhythm. Work kept me occupied. Friends, those who had proven loyal, helped me stay grounded. I sold the house Paul and I once shared, unwilling to live among its memories, and purchased a modern condo downtown with sweeping city views. 6 months after our anniversary dinner, Paul accepted a plea deal, 3 years in a minimum prison, forfeiture of most assets, and restitution to investors on sentencing day. I sat quietly in the back of the courtroom, watching him stand before the judge, humbled and broken. He didn't see me. I ensured that. I wasn't there to gloat or forgive. I was there to witness the close of that chapter. That evening, in my new home, I opened a bottle of champagne, the same brand we had shared at our last anniversary. I poured a glass and walked to the window. City lights glowing below. My phone rang, an unfamiliar number. Hello, I answered cautiously. Rebecca Marshall, a woman's voice asked. Yes, this is Nurse Collins from Mercy Hospital. We have your sister, Lisa Grant, in our care. You're listed as her emergency contact. My heart raced. What happened? She was admitted after a suicide attempt. The nurse explained gently. She's stable now, but she's asking for you. The glass trembled in my hand. I understand this may be difficult, the nurse continued, but the doctor believes it could help her recovery if you visited, even briefly. I closed my eyes and saw Lisa first on my doorstep, pleading for help. Then, as a child, always, trailing behind me, and later, at my wedding, crying tears of joy. Double quotes, Miss Marshall, are you still there? Yes, I answered at last. Tell her I'll come tomorrow. I ended the call and set aside the untouched champagne. The taste of victory had faded long ago, leaving only emptiness and the same question that haunted me for months. What comes after revenge? Mercy Hospital smelled like every other sterile antiseptic, heavy with despair. A nurse guided me down a quiet corridor to Lisa's room. She's stable, the nurse explained, but fragile. Try not to upset her. I almost laughed. My presence alone would upset her. Still, I nodded and entered. Lisa looked smaller than I remembered, thinner, paler, fragile against the white sheets. Tubes ran from her arm to the force-stand. When her eyes met mine, they widened with surprise before filling with tears. You came, she whispered. I didn't think you would. I stayed standing by the bed. What happened, Lisa? She turned away. I couldn't handle it any more. The guilt, the loneliness, losing the baby. Her voice broke. I felt that familiar sting. I heard, I'm sorry, are you? She asked, meeting my gaze. Yes, I said honestly. Her lips trembled. You never wanted that. Just everything else, my relationship, my reputation, my future. You took those things from me first, I reminded her. Lisa nodded slowly. I know. I've had time to think about it all, the things we did to you. She reached shakily for a glass of water, and instinctively I steadied it for her. Thank you, she murmured. Silence settled between us until she spoke again. Paul's in prison. I know. He blames me, she continued. He says if I hadn't been so needy, he wouldn't have made those financial mistakes. That sounded like Paul always shifting the blame. And you? I asked quietly. Who do you blame? Myself, she admitted. For everything. For wanting what you had. For being selfish. Tears streamed down her face. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt drained, weighed down by it all. I don't expect forgiveness, Lisa whispered. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. Truly sorry. I studied her face, the same features as mine, the same childhood memories, the same blood. I'm not ready to forgive you, I said. I don't know if I ever will. She nodded through her tears. I understand, but, I added, surprising even myself, I don't want you dead, Lisa. A faint, sad smile crossed her lips. That's something, at least. I sank into the chair beside her. What will you do now? I don't know, she admitted. I lost the gallery job. I can't pay rent. Mom and Dad offered to let me move back, but I can't face them every day, not after everything. I didn't offer help. I couldn't. But I still asked, have you thought about leaving? Starting over somewhere else? With what money? What work? My name is ruined in the art world. Thanks to she stopped. Thanks to me, I finished. Say it. Lisa sighed. We both made terrible choices, Rebecca. The difference is yours came after what we did first. It was the closest thing to absolution I'd ever get. Yet it didn't feel like victory. The nurse entered to check her vitals. She needs rest, she said softly. I stood. I should go. Lisa caught my hand. Will you come back? I gently pulled away. I don't know. At the door, I paused. Take care of yourself, Lisa. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But it wasn't hatred either. And for now, that would have to be enough. Life moved on. Seasons passed. And the scandal around Paul's arrest and conviction eventually slipped from public attention, replaced by fresher stories. I focused on my career, working tirelessly until I made partner at the firm. The following year, I dated occasionally but kept men at arm's length, still unable to fully trust. Paul wrote to me once from Prasanna, long letter filled with apologies and reflections. I read it carefully, then burned it in my kitchen sink, watching the pages curl into ash. Lisa moved to Seattle, about as far as she could go while staying in the continental US. She found a job at a small gallery. And according to our mother, she was doing better. We didn't speak directly, but on my birthday she sent me a card that simply read, "Thinking of you." I didn't reply, but I couldn't throw it away either. 2 years after that disastrous anniversary dinner, I was assigned a major case defending a tech company accused of fraud. The irony wasn't lost on me, though this time my clients were genuine victims of a competitor's smear campaign. The case consumed my time and energy, giving me focus and purpose. When we won, the victory made national headlines. I was interviewed for legal journals and featured in business magazines, my name quickly tied to corporate defense success. After the case ended, the company's CEO, Daniel Lawson, invited me to dinner to celebrate. As he put it, Daniel was nothing like Paul Fult, transparent, with an easy laugh and no pretense. Over dinner, he spoke about his work with the same passion I had for mine. We debated legal precedents and corporate ethics, and when he asked about my personal life, I gave the short version: divorced, no kids, complicated family. Everyone has complications, he said with a shrug. It's what you do with them that matters. At the end of the evening, he asked if he could see me again. I hesitated, but he quickly added, just dinner, no pressure. Something, in his eyes, a quiet kindness I hadn't seen in years, made me agree. One dinner turned into 2, then 3. We took things slowly. I kept waiting for warning signs, the ones I had overlooked with Paul, but Daniel remained direct, always respectful of my boundaries. 6 months into our relationship, while cooking dinner at his place, he asked about my divorce. My usual response was, it's complicated. Handing me a glass of wine, he said, I've got time. So, I told him everything. The affair with my sister, the betrayal, the revenge I had carefully carried out. I admitted the cruelty of my actions and the cold determination it required. When I finished, Daniel was silent for a long moment. Do you think less of me now? I asked, bracing for rejection. He considered it seriously. I think you endured an unbearable betrayal and refused to stay a victim. I won't judge your choices, but I do wonder, did the revenge bring you peace? It was the very question I had asked myself for 2 years. No, I admitted at last. Daniel nodded as if he already knew. Then what will bring you peace? He asked. I had no answer. 3 years after that anniversary dinner, my mother called. Paul had been released from prison. He asked about you, she said cautiously. And what did you tell him? I asked. That you've moved on. That you're happy now. Was I happy? I had a strong career, a good man in my life, financial security, but happiness felt like too simple a word for the complicated emotions that still lived beneath the surface of my carefully rebuilt life. A week later, a letter arrived, in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a check for $5 million and a brief note. Rebecca, this can't undo what I did, but it represents what I stole from our life together, from your family's investment in my company, and from the years you supported my dreams. Prison and loss have taught me the true cost of my actions. I don't expect forgiveness. I didn't deserve forgiveness, but I needed you to know. I recognized the harm I caused, not only through the affair, but also through years of taking you for granted. I hope you find happiness. Paul. I stared at the check for a long time. It felt like blood money in one sense, yet it also carried something I hadn't expected from Paul: genuine acknowledgement of his mistakes. That evening, I showed the letter to Daniel. What should I do with it? I asked. He studied the check. What do you want to do with it? I thought about it. I don't need his money. I don't want it. Then don't keep it, Daniel said calmly. Use it for something meaningful. The next day, I created a foundation for survivors of domestic abuse, women who, unlike me, hadn't had the resources or support to escape destructive relationships. I named it after my grandmother, who had shown me what quiet strength truly was. 2 months later, I received another unexpected message, an email from Lisa. Rebecca, I heard about your foundation. It's a wonderful thing you're doing. I've been in therapy for the past 2 years, working through my issues, my competitiveness with you, my constant need for validation, and my self-destructive patterns. I don't say this expecting forgiveness or redemption. I say it because I want you to know I'm trying to change. I miss having a sister. I know that's selfish after what I did, but it's true. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. Love always, Lisa. I read the email several times, unsure whether to respond. That night, I discussed it with Daniel as we walked along the waterfront near my condo. Do you miss having a sister? He asked. The question hit me harder than expected. Yes, I admitted. I do. Then maybe it's worth a conversation, he suggested, not reconciliation necessarily. Just a conversation. After everything, he stopped walking and turned to me. Rebecca, you're one of the strongest people I've ever known. You survived betrayal and became stronger, but strength isn't the same as hardness. He touched my face gently. Forgiveness isn't about the other person deserving it. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of anger. I knew he was right. The revenge I had planned had given me satisfaction, but not peace. The resentment I held toward Lisa and Paul was a poison I kept drinking, expecting it to harm them. The next day, I replied to Lisa's email with a single line. I'm coming to Seattle next month for a conference. Maybe we could have coffee. Her reply came within minutes, confirming the time and place. I'll be there. The cafe in Seattle was crowded with the afternoon rush. I arrived early and chose a quiet table in the corner, my heart pounding, as if I were about to deliver a final argument in court. When Lisa entered, I almost didn't recognize her. Her hair was shorter, styled differently. She had lost weight, but what stood out most was her eyes, less frantic, more grounded. She saw me, paused briefly, then walked over. Rebecca, she said softly. Thank you for coming. I gestured to the chair opposite me. Sit down. We ordered coffee, and silence filled the space between us. You look good, Lisa finally said. Happy, I'm getting there, I replied. You look different. She smiled faintly. There, a lot of it, and medication for the anxiety I never handled properly. I nodded, remembering how unsettled Lisa had always been, even as a child. Our parents had brushed it off as artistic temperament. I saw the foundation you started, she continued. It's incredible work. It felt right to use the money that way. Paul's money, she asked hesitantly. Yes. Another pause, heavier this time. Have you seen him? I finally asked. Since he got out, Lisa shook her head. No, he reached out once, but I didn't respond. That part of my life is closed. I took a sip of coffee. Mine too. I heard you're with someone, she said. Mom mentioned it. Daniel, I confirmed. We've been together almost 2 years now. Are you happy? She asked, her voice quiet. The question echoed what Daniel had asked me before about forgiveness, about peace. I'm learning to be, I answered honestly. Lisa looked down at her coffee. I know I have no right to ask this, but do you think you could ever forgive me? Not now, maybe not for years, but someday. I had asked myself this question countless times over the past 3 years. Every time, the answer had been an absolute no. Yet, sitting here across from my sister, seeing her genuine regret, her struggle, her pain, I realized the answer had shifted without me noticing. I think I've already begun to, I said quietly. Tears filled Lisa's eyes, though she quickly blinked them away. Thank you for saying that. It doesn't mean I forget, I clarified, or that things return to how they once were. I know, she said softly. I don't expect that. Maybe, I added, surprising even myself, we can create something new. She nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. That afternoon, we talked for 2 hours. We avoided the hardest topics and instead spoke about safer ones: our parents, her new job, my foundation. As we prepared to leave, Lisa hesitated, then asked, "Would it be strange if I hugged you?" "It would be," but I nodded anyway. Her embrace was hesitant at first, then fiercely tight. I felt her tears against my shoulder. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, "for everything." I patted her back awkwardly before stepping away. "I know." We said goodbye outside the cafe, promising to stay in touch. As I watched her walk away, I felt something unexpected: a lightness, as though a weight I had carried for years had begun to lift. That night I called Daniel. "I saw Lisa today. How did it go?" he asked. "Better than I thought," I admitted. "We talked, really talked." "I'm proud of you," he said. "I know that wasn't easy." "It wasn't," I agreed, "but it was necessary for her, and for me." Saying it, I realized how true it was. I had held on to anger for so long that it had become part of me, but I no longer wanted it to define who I was. "So what now?" he asked. I thought of the past 3 years: the pain, the betrayal, the revenge, the emptiness of winning. I thought of the foundation, of Lisa, of Paul, of all the different roads that had led me here. "Now," I said, "I want to build something new, something better, together." Daniel asked gently. I smiled, feeling peace I hadn't known in years. "Yes, together." 5 years after the anniversary dinner where Paul revealed he was leaving me for my sister, I stood in the backyard of my new home, watching Daniel arrange chairs for our guests. "More to the left," I called out, laughing as he exaggerated the movement, shifting the row just 2 inches. "Perfectionist," he teased. "You knew that when you proposed," I reminded him. He kissed me lightly, and I wouldn't have it any other way. We had been married for a year, in a small ceremony with only close friends and family. Daniel's teenage daughters were my bridesmaids, and my parents had walked me down the aisle. Today's gathering celebrated the 5th anniversary of my foundation, which had grown from one shelter into a nationwide network supporting women rebuilding their lives after trauma. Lisa had flown in from Seattle for the event. She now ran the West Coast branch, using her art background to create therapy programs. Paul would not be attending. Since his release from prison, we had spoken only once, over coffee, a short, uneasy meeting where we both acknowledged that some wounds could never fully heal. He had remarried and moved to Colorado, running a small construction business far removed from his former corporate ambitions. "They're here," Daniel called, nodding toward the gate where my parents entered, followed by Lisa carrying a wrapped gift. I watched her approach. Our relationship would never return to what it was. Too much had been broken, too much lost, but we had found a way forward, cautious, respectful, slowly rebuilding trust. "Ready?" Daniel asked, taking my hand. I looked around at the life I had built from the wreckage of Betrayal: loving husband, meaningful work, and even a fragile peace with my past. "Ready?" I said. As my family gathered, I thought about the path that had led me here. The revenge I had once pursued so carefully had never given me what I truly needed. It was only by letting go of anger, by choosing to build instead of destroy, that I found what I had been searching for all along. Not revenge, not even justice,